Good morning, everyone. Oh my goodness. That's really loud. You can't hear that in here. I don't know if you can hear it out there, but we're booming. My name's Nicole Baird Spencer, and today I'm going to chair you through the first half of the meeting, and then we'll hand it off after we elect new officers. So today, go ahead and start with our call to order, please. Roll call. Sorry, I just called this to order. Let's do a roll call.
Yes. Richard Beck.
Here.
Stacy Dupree.
Here.
Michaela Owens.
Here.
Hannah Schaefer for Tom Laws.
Here.
Cody Homan.
Here.
Alex Yan.
Here.
Bob Callahan. Lindy Lindstrom. Clay Tucker. Michelle Barron.
Carla Nelson here for Michelle Barron.
Can you repeat that again? Sorry.
Oh, sorry. Carla Nelson here for Michelle Barron.
Thank you. Dan Lister. Deb Root. Bree Brush.
Here.
Deanna Dupuis.
Here.
Nina Schaefer.
Here.
Morgan Besaw. Haley Hart. Nicole Baird Spencer.
Here.
Andrew Glassfell.
Here.
Jenna Thornborough for Hannah Veal.
Here.
Lee Belt.
Here.
Troy Behunin. Marina Lundy.
Here.
Daryl Romine.
Here.
Caleb Hood.
Present.
Greg Bergman for Brian McClure.
I'm here.
Jason Van Gilder.
Present.
Matt Ricks for Crystal Craig.
Here.
Clemente Salinas.
Here.
Mark Stoyer.
Here.
Rob Hartsock. Jacob Mack Qualls.
Here.
John Nickel.
Good morning. Here.
Kelsey Johnson. Joe McMullen. Gabe Finkelstein.
Here.
Zach Pietmeyer. Michael Toole.
I'm here.
Aaron Bogus.
Present.
Isaac Josephek. Stephen Hunt.
Here.
Miranda Carson.
Here.
Curtis Lovelace.
Present.
Cody Lund. And then is there anyone I happen to miss? All right, Madam Chair, we have quorum.
Thank you. Next item is open discussion and announcements. Does anybody have anything for the good of the order? Tony.
Hi, Tony Tisdale with Compass. I did want to announce that we will be opening the call for projects for the Unified Planning Work Program project. So if you need any help from Compass staff, let us know so we can help you with those applications. They're due, I think, February 13th. And we'll be getting an email out today inviting you to apply for those. Thank you.
Cody.
Just wanted to introduce Hannah Mae Schaefer. She's our ACHD bicycle and pedestrian programs coordinator now, and she's filling in for Tom Laws today. She's an Ada County local, specifically Boise, by commuter active advocate for walkable, livable, multimodal streets, and has impressive experience working with nonprofits, volunteer organizations, small and mid-sized businesses, and educational organizations. And she's very excited to geek out with us on transportation stuff.
Wonderful. Welcome aboard.
Madam
Any
Chair.
other announcements? Oh,
Madam
Bree,
Chair,
sorry.
Bree, City of Boise, I wanted to do a similar welcome for Nina Schaefer. She's our new Pathways Program Manager at the city. So we're excited to have her present at Compass and working with you all on our Pathways portfolio.
Awesome. Anyone else
Madam
out
Chair,
there?
Caleb, City Meridian.
Hey, Caleb.
We'll save the best for last. Craig Bergman, you heard him just with roll call, but he is our new coordination planner for the city of Meridian. So Craig's actually been on the team in a different role, doing some addressing and GIS, and we just sent a letter to Director Rayborn earlier this week. So you'll see him more at RTAC.
Wonderful. Any other announcements? Wonderful. Okay, we'll move on. We're going to go to our consent agenda. Let's go ahead and look at a motion for approval of the November 19th, 2025 RTAC minutes.
I move for approval.
Second.
Thank you. Approval, second. Cody. Okay, any discussion before we move into an action? Awesome. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Awesome. They are approved. We are going to go into item 4, which is a special item. It is to receive an introduction to Compass.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of RTAC. I'm Amy Luft, the communication team lead here at Compass. And first of all, I'm going to take just a moment of privilege since I have the mic. And I want to say thank you to Nicole for all your years of leadership and service, not only with Compass, but for the entire Treasure Valley. So thank you very much. You are going to be very, very missed. So thank you, Nicole. On a maybe less sad note, I'm here today to give you just a brief overview of who Compass is, what we do, and specifically your role as members of RTAC. For those of you that attended Compass 101 yesterday or are planning on attending tomorrow, a little of this will be a repeat, but also there'll be quite a bit of this that is just specific to your role at RTAC, so you'll have some new information as well. So we'll talk a little bit about who and what Compass is. Some of that will be that repeat, what Compass does, but then very specifically what RTAC does and what you can expect at RTAC meetings and what ultimately Compass is expecting from you at RTAC meetings. So we'll start just to kind of level setting of who and what is Compass. Compass is an association of governments. We are the forum for regional collaboration in Southwest Idaho that helps create an economically vibrant region. Our mission to do that is to conduct regional planning, facilitate coordination and cooperation, serve as a source of information and expertise, and help our member agencies, all of you, access funding to accomplish both local and regional goals. We are you. Compass is its members. We are that association of governments. We're essentially a government agency made of other government agencies. So whenever Compass is acting, ultimately we're acting on behalf of you, your agencies, and your elected bodies. Those member agencies include cities in Ada and Canyon counties, all 3 Ada, Canyon, and Boise counties, the county governments themselves, Ada County Highway District, in Ada County, Highway District number 4 in Canyon County, as well as other agencies that have an interest and a stake in the future of the Valley, including Boise State University, Department of Environmental Quality, ITD, Valley Regional Transit, West Ada School District, and others. We are both an association of governments as well as a metropolitan planning organization. Our role as an association of governments serves Ada, Boise, and Canyon counties, and in that we provide member services to all of those members, from grant writing services to data and communication services. As a metropolitan planning organization, we serve just Ada and Canyon counties, and I'll talk a little bit more about exactly what that means. An MPO is a federally and state designated organization that provides transportation planning services on behalf of its member agencies in areas that have a population of 50,000 or more. There are over 400 MPOs in the US. Each and every one of them looks different, but there are a couple of really basic requirements. The first is that it needs to contain the largest city in the region. The second is that it needs to contain at least 75% of the urban population. And the third is that it is formed by member agencies, but ultimately designated by the governor of the state. Compass is governed by a board of directors who essentially are the representatives, the leadership, elected and otherwise, from your member agencies. And they're really the ones that provide the forum for the future. And they're the ones, as you make recommendations, that you are making recommendations toward. We also have a series of committees, 2 policy committees, both are subsets of the board of directors, our executive committee and our finance committee, and they are both elected officials who are acting on behalf of the board, making policy and other recommendations. And then we have technical committee, which is you, the Regional Transportation Advisory Committee. And your role is to provide information and recommendations to the board on technical and transportation issues. So who is on RTAC? It's primarily staff and in some cases elected officials from our member agencies. Your representation on RTAC mirrors that of your agency's representation on the board. So if your agency has 3 board members, you have 3 seats at RTAC. If your agency has 1 board member, you have 1 seat at RTAC. We also have 1 member from the Public Participation Work Group. And Isaac, I'm just going to put you on the spot. If you just want to raise your hand. Isaac is this year's PPW representative, so he will be representing that work group and that public voice. Here he replaced Jason Wild, who served in that role for the past 2 years. And then you have your Compass staff liaison, who this year will be alternating between Austin Miller and Tony Tisdale. So we also have a series of work groups. A lot of you are on those work groups. I just mentioned the Public Participation Work Group. Those contain a lot of member agency staff, but they are also open to other individuals as well. Whereas RTAC, other than the 1 PPW representative, is just member agency staff. So those work groups contain member agency staff, but also members of the public, private interests, whoever is needed to help us deal with very specific issues. So for instance, on our demographic work group, we have representatives from local utilities because they are also doing demographic forecasting and able to provide some really great insight. So those are not limited. They really are based on whatever needs we have to help us answer the questions or deal with the issues that those work groups are representing. We also have, obviously, our Compass planning staff. We have 19 staff total, of which 12 are planners. In addition to that, we have our 3 communication staff, 2 financial staff, and then our 2 directors. So what is it exactly that Compass does? We have 4 primary regional roles. We plan, mainly transportation planning, so you should all be in the right place. We implement those plans, we provide technical expertise, and we facilitate regional coordination and cooperation. An MPO has 2 primary functions. The first of those is long-range transportation planning, so follows our first role. And the second of those is distributing federal transportation dollars, which is that implementation arm of Compass. So we'll talk a little bit about each of these, but we'll start with the planning role. So each of our 4 teams align with each of our 4 roles. We'll start with our planning team, which is led by Austin Miller, our planning team lead. I'm happy to say we have a full planning team for the first time in 1.5 years. Austin, as well as along the wall, you'll see a couple of familiar faces, Brent Moore, who we have now successfully poached, and John Hardesty, as well as Olivia Vilstich-McKinnon and Gus Levaholtz, who are not in the room today, but have also recently joined the planning team. The planning team's main role is to develop the long-range transportation plan, Communities in Motion. Hopefully you all know that the current plan is Communities in Motion 2050. That was adopted in December of 2022. And we are now well into the update of that, which will be Communities in Motion 2055, which is slated for adoption in December of 2027. But that is not all the planning team does. They also work on a lot of other plans and projects that ultimately feed into the long-range plan, including the Let's Ride Treasure Valley study, which Austin will share with you later today, the Waterway Pathway Plan, our Resilience Improvement Plan, our Data Bike and Bicycle Pedestrian Counters, which is what John will be working on or is working on,
as well as our development review checklists, which tie the regional plan to your local plans. Our second main role as an MPO is to distribute federal transportation dollars. And that is where our implementation arm comes in with our resource development team. And Tony is our resource development team lead. Also on our resource development team, there's Matt Carlson and Sharon Sater. You hear from them probably more than anyone else on the Compass staff throughout the year. And they're the ones who take what our planning team does and what all of you do with Communities in Motion and turn those plans into dollars and into actual projects on the ground. You see this graphic a lot. I know it really exemplifies how we take and you take Communities in Motion, turn it into those projects, as I mentioned, through our federal transportation dollars, which is through the Transportation Improvement Program, which is our short-term 5 to 7 year budget of transportation projects that are either federally funded or maybe locally or developer funded, but are regionally significant. Those have to implement the long-range plan. And while we update it yearly, we do amend it or balance it frequently. I would say probably 10 or 11 out of our 12 RTAC meetings a year, you will have some sort of action on the tip, and you have a couple of those today. We also have projects that are funded locally, and Matt Carlson heads those up, and those are through our Communities in Motion implementation grants and our project development program projects. You'll hear more about those later in the year. And then projects that are not funded either federally or locally will fall into our resource development plan, which then is the marching orders for our resource development team to help you find funding for those projects. So nothing completely falls off the table. Our third regional role is that of technical expert, and this is led by technical team lead Marianne Waldinger. And your technical team includes Hunter Mulhall, who is sitting against the wall, as well as Brian Crowley and Eric Adolphson, who are our GIS whizzes. We provide a lot of technical tools and services. Many of those we use, or perhaps all of those we use internally, but we also provide those for our member agencies to help you with your work and your planning as well, including data, mapping and GIS, orthophotography, travel demand modeling, congestion management. We also recently completed our carbon reduction strategy. We do ongoing performance measurement, as well as working on safety issues to help try to save lives and reduce serious injuries on our roadways. Our final role is that of regional facilitator, and that is the communication team. As I mentioned before, I'm the communication team lead. I'm joined by Josie Gallup. You probably see her name on a lot of emails. And Terry Gregory, who I know is probably everyone's favorite person at Compass because she's the one that takes care of all of the rest of us. We do a lot of different things. One of those biggies through Terry is managing all of Compass's board and executive and RTAC and finance committee meetings. We also head up public participation for all of our planning projects, have our education series, podcast, as well as meeting facilitation and other communication tasks. A couple of those pieces I want to highlight real quickly. The first is our ongoing education series. I know many of you have taken advantage of this. If you haven't, I encourage you to. We bring in regional and national experts to speak on a variety of topics that are relevant to planning, transportation, funding here in the Treasure Valley. We have 4 on slate for this year. The first one we will begin promoting later this week. It will be the end of February on AI and its role in planning. We also have one scheduled for March on the impact of huge transformative transportation projects, bringing in an individual from the Phoenix area where they have had both public transportation and roadway projects that have really transformed their region. We also will be looking at the economic impact of active transportation infrastructure. That right now is tentatively scheduled for September, so it'll be a little ways out. And then we are also working on bringing in a speaker to speak on human dimensions of transportation safety. Although I will say I've had a really hard time finding a speaker. So we do have a fallback of looking at transportation funding, because that is always a really huge issue if I cannot find a speaker who has the availability to do that. We also have our Good Move Safety campaign. All of your member agencies are encouraged to participate in that. Many of them do already. If they don't, I really encourage you to. It is a regional safety campaign. We house it at Compass, but it is not Compass's campaign. It really is designed to be a regional campaign owned by all of the public agencies within our planning area to help prevent deaths and serious injuries on our roadways. It's designed to provide positive reinforcement of good behaviors and encourage people to take personal responsibility for their own safety and the safety of others. You can find our Good Move calendar for 2026 on the back table if you don't already have one. I encourage you to pick one up. If your agency does not have any, come see me and I can give you a whole handful. All of the agencies that participated in this each got a stack themselves. We have a different month or a different agency represented each month with their own good moves. So encourage you to display that in your office, hand them out. We really want to help do everything that we can to improve safety on our roadways. As I said before, our communication team supports the public participation efforts for all of our plans and projects. This year, that will primarily be focused on the TIP. We will have a month-long public comment period in July on the annual update to the TIP, as well as periodic public comment periods on amendments to the TIP. Next year then, and our previous year, we also had heavy focus on Communities in Motion 2055, but this year will be a little quieter from a public participation standpoint on that, as the planning team is working through a lot of the technical work. One other thing that the communication team does is support our Leadership in Motion awards. We just awarded these in December. They are to recognize businesses, nonprofits, individuals, and projects that support the goals and vision of Communities in Motion. One person from RTAC each year does serve on the selection committee for those awards. That is in late fall. Nominations are open in August and September, and it's never too early to be thinking about who may be deserving of that nomination for next year. I want to thank Miranda this year, who helped us out by representing RTAC on that award selection committee. So what can you expect this year at your committee meetings? From a Communities in Motion standpoint, you're really going to be focusing on projects. You're going to first be looking at the process for prioritizing the projects for the long-range plan, then the funding policy, which also will shape those projects, and then finally selecting those funded and unfunded projects for the plan. So this is going to be a pretty heavy lift year for Communities in Motion, a really important work. For the other planning elements, you'll be asked today to recommend the Let's Ride Treasure Valley study. Also throughout the year, you'll be looking at and ultimately being asked to recommend the Waterway Pathway Plan, the Resilience Improvement Plan, as well as be looking at some updates and changes to our development review policy, which guide our development review checklist, which is how we connect that local and regional planning. From a funding standpoint, from Tony's team, you will frequently have balancing and amendment actions. You have one of each today. You'll also be working throughout the spring and summer to develop the next FY 2027 through 2033 TIP, as well as selecting projects for those local funds for the Communities in Motion implementation grants and project development program projects, and then also recommending the resource development plan. So what is your role? First of all, we really ask you to attend regularly and attend in person if possible. It really helps with the conversation. And if you're here on a regular basis, you know what's going on, you know what that conversation is. Also really encourage you to read your packet ahead of time and reach out if you have questions on any of those items. Don't hesitate. I'm not sure what this is about. Call the person that's on there. Every item in the packet has a name, a phone number, and an email address associated with it. We also have optional meetings sometimes. Often Tony will have optional workshops for the TIP. Sometimes we'll have online rankings. Really encourage you to participate in those as well as volunteering for subcommittees, because at some of those, or sometimes is the opportunity to do a deeper dive and really get some of your deeper and more intricate questions answered. So that's a great time to really be involved. And then in your meetings, like I said, review your packet, discuss, ask questions, provide feedback. Don't just assume that because everybody else said yes, you're going to say yes too. Make sure you know what's going on and don't hesitate to ask those important questions. I also asked you to serve as a liaison to your board members, and that is one of your primary roles at RTAC. And since this is Nicole's last meeting, I'm going to put Nicole on the spot a little bit because I have seen and I know what Nicole does, and she does a fabulous job at working with her elected officials as they're coming to a board meeting and they know what is going on. I have picked up packets after the fact that have Nicole's notes to her board members on there about each and every item. And it's great because they come in knowing what discussion has been, knowing how things impact the city. And it's a really, really great resource for her board members. So I really encourage everyone to kind of follow in Nicole's footsteps. I know there are other agencies and other staff that do that as well, but I'll pick on Nicole since she's leaving and can't give me too hard of a time later. And how do you stay in the know? First of all, in your packet. Maybe little known fact, in the back of every single one of your RTAC packets is what's called the RTAC Agenda Worksheet. That shows you is what is scheduled for your future RTAC meetings for the rest of the year. So it's a great chance to see what's coming up. Also a chance to see if you have something you would like addressed, reach out to Compass staff and we can get it on that agenda worksheet so it can be on a future meeting, whether it's something you want from Compass to address or a request, maybe somebody wants to hear from West Ada. Let us know. We can work with Miranda and get that on the packet, get that on the agenda worksheet. You can also find all of the information that you need online. Your packets are on our website. I know you always get a link directly from Terry on the meeting packet webpage. Our meetings are also live streamed on YouTube, and you can then also watch them after the fact on YouTube. We also link to our meeting packets from our homepage as well as from our social media channels. And finally, in your inbox, as you all, I would assume know, you get a lot of emails from Terry informing you of meetings, packets. Use that as your resource. You should also all receive the Keeping Up with Compass newsletter from me each month. Everyone who is on our board, RTAC, or any of Compass's work groups automatically gets this newsletter, and it's designed to help you see how projects or issues are moving through the Compass process. So that shows what is happening in work groups each month, our committees each month, and our board each month, so that you can watch the progress of how things move through. And then you also get the funding newsletter from Matt each month. If you do not get this and would like to, let Matt know. And this lets you be aware of any funding opportunities that are upcoming that may be relevant to agencies in the Treasure Valley. And finally, just ask. We're always here to help. You can, as I said, our contact information with each individual item is in your packet. In addition to that, you can go to our staff webpage online or just give any of us a call. If we are not the right one to have an answer for you, I can assure you that we will know who that is and we can connect you to that person. So don't ever hesitate to reach out. If you're unsure, just pick somebody, pick me, and I will get you connected. So with that, I'm happy to stand for any questions and I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much, Amy. Having sat on the RTAC for the last 22 years in 3 different locations, starting in downtown Boise to 2 Meridian locations, it is so important to make the relationships with your staff, with the Compass staff. They can help you when you just tell them, hey, I'm working on this weird idea, and they come back with information to help you. Just sometimes informally, and sometimes they can say, we actually have something that fits exactly for what you need. And so really encourage your full commitment to coming to Compass and engaging in Compass. I think it is a very unique organization, and it does have a very broad powers authority through their joint powers agreement. And I think it does give you that ability. They don't just do transportation. And I think that's the important thing to understand about Compass. Is there any questions as we move forward?
Madam Chair, one. Amy, can you mention a word more about Good Moves in terms of the duration of the campaign and how the campaign itself is kind of developed? You mentioned that it was not just a Compass thing. If there are ideas that somebody wants to put into that, is that something that's still open, or is it set and it's running through like the next 12 months or?
Great question, Madam Chair. Stephen. So Good Move was born out of First of all, the realization that so many of our member agencies are all doing different safety campaigns and really wanting to combine those really to both have economies of scale, save us all money, as well as make a broader, consistent campaign. Members of the public will remember seeing the same thing over and over again, much more than they will if they see disparate things all over the place. So we brought that idea to our public participation work group, and that is really where it came from. For the most part, it is the communications staff at your member agencies that we're working with. We're working with Haley and Jason, for instance, from Valley Regional Transit. The campaign itself, in terms of the style, the messaging, the media kit, has been developed, and that is set. ITD graciously used a contract that they had and essentially loaned us their consultant to do that work. However, the campaign itself is ongoing. It does not have an end date. We are always looking for partnerships. We've partnered with Valley Regional Transit in developing coasters and providing free rides home a year ago in the holidays. This past year, we had a series of billboards throughout the valley, which they were just, in that case, it was just a compass piece. But the company, they were electronic billboards, so they cycle through. The company that we worked with was so supportive of the message that they actually ran the billboards that we paid for one site through their entire system because they were so supportive of the safety messages. The calendar involves 13 agencies. We also have a new initiative that just is starting this week with ACHD, and we are doing a before the movies 30-second clip at the Overland Park Cinemas and Bodo downtown. So if you go to the movies, be watching for it. ACHD produced the clip, and then Compass is paying for the airtime. So we're always looking for people to partner with. At the same time, we also really encourage other members to partner. You don't have to go through Compass. ACHD and the city of Boise can choose to partner on something. It does not have to involve Compass at all. We're just kind of the repository for the information. And Josie Gallup from our staff is who heads up that program. So if you have any questions or thoughts or ideas, you can certainly share them with me or share them with her.
A follow-up question. So that coordination all happens through the public participation committee, is that right?
Yes, that is true. I will also point out, we also have a lot of swag, of Good Move swag that your communication staff, again, should be aware of and know about. But it is available to anyone who wants to use it and be sharing that message.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Any other questions for Amy? Wonderful. Thank you so much, Amy.
Thank you.
We are going to move into our action items. The first one is to elect a chair and vice chair for 2026. So with that, just to give you an understanding, the chair will run the meetings each week. They do meet each month, sorry. They do meet with staff ahead of time to work through the agenda, any questions or concerns, time and information that needs to be shared. And then the vice chair, which is me, currently, you step in when the chair can't do it. So not huge, heavy lifts, but they are important roles for us, and they do help guide the agenda setting and processes going forward. So with that, do I have any nominations for a chairman? For
Vice Chair? I do.
Yes.
This is Mark, City of Nampa. I'd like to nominate Jason Van Gilder of the City of Middleton for Vice Chair.
Thank you. One clarification. We tend to try and alternate roles of Ada and Canyon County. We don't have to, but we do. So I'm going to just say that. Jason, do you accept the nomination for chairman?
I think that was a
Vice chair, sorry.
Vice chair.
Sorry, Mark, got that wrong.
But yes, I would accept the nomination for vice chair.
Any other nominations for vice chair at this point in time? Awesome. Okay, with that and with the accepted nomination, can I get a second for that nomination? We had the nomination, we had an acceptance. Do we have a second?
Lee Bell,
second.
I'm going to take it from Lee. You guys, in the room, they were fighting over who was going to do it. Lee, you win. Lee seconded. With that, any discussion? Going to move forward. All those in favor of Jason being our vice chair for 2026, say aye.
Aye.
All those against? No one hates you, Jason. Way to go. Jason is now going to be our vice chair for 2026. Then we are going to go to our nominations for chair. Do we have any nominations for the chair of the RTAC for 2026?
Madam Chair, I'd like to nominate Miranda Carson.
Beautiful. Andrew from Eagle nominating Miranda, right? Wow. Okay. My brain hurts. Miranda Carson for our chairman. Is there any, do you accept the nomination? Yes. Do I have a second?
Second.
This is Stacy. I'll second.
Sorry, Stacy, you were beat out by Cody Homan here in the room. Sorry, they were streamlined this time. They didn't want to bicker over it. I got a second from Cody and a third from Stacy. All those in favor of Miranda serving as our 2026 RTAC chair?
Aye.
It's online. You have to wait. You have to kind of pause, you know? Anybody against? Awesome. You too have no haters in the room. With that, I'm going to hand your meeting over to Miss Miranda as your new chair.
Thank you, Nicole. All right, moving on to item 4B. Tony Tisdale will recommend balancing in transportation management area.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. This item is for a balancing recommendation. This one is a little bit long, so bear with me. And we have a couple of revisions and corrections and all the fun stuff today. So, so bear with me through this presentation and I appreciate it. So today we'll provide a review of the balancing process at a very high level. Then we'll review those requests that came in and the recommendations that staff has for those actions. Luckily today, all the actions will probably be very positive. So I think you'll enjoy this process. And then we'll have some discussion and the recommendation following that. So just as a high level of how we do balancing, it is a rationale of the priorities. We have a policy in place on how we move forward with what gets funded. Targeted with the construction funds are always the top priority, and it followed by advanced construct with funding that are out there for locals to make sure that we cover as much of the project with federal funds once it becomes federalized as possible. And the next priority is to use those funds for right-of-way and design to keep those projects moving and then minimize the delay of scheduled construction cost. And then finally, any needs that are eligible but currently funded through different programs, those would be a last priority, but they would still be eligible through this process. So today we have some money that is available through the release of funds through a couple of projects that are closing and also a very low bid that came in, which was amazing. And we also have several increases of funds, many to, well, one to cover high bid, several for converting advanced construction funds, and then there are some cost overruns as well. So in your packet, you will find a worksheet that looks similar to this. We've rearranged a little bit to make it fit on the sheet, and we've also truncated these dollars. I will provide a couple of revisions next, but I wanted to cover what you have in your packet first. So the cost increase set aside, that is any additional funds we have available that is unprogrammed. The pavement preservation ADA project is closing out and just had a little bit of funding that needed to be released to get it to a low enough cost remaining for ITD to close that project. The roadway and ADA improvements for 2023, that's the one that had the really, really good bid. So ACHD has requested to release about $3 million. The pedestrian crossing safety access project, ACHD has had a late start getting that one under design and requested to delay that project and also to break it into separate projects per segment. And so it would end up with 4 key numbers rather than 1. And that gives it a little bit more flexibility since it's being delayed, that they could have that flexibility to add it wherever it fits. So the pedestrian improvement 2026 at 43rd had a high bid. So this is $70,000 is to cover that high bid. The Vista Avenue is a project that had advanced construction costs on it and requesting to convert that advanced construct to federal aid. 5 Mile had two requests. One of them had advanced construct. And you can see we had the offset to that advanced construct in the future year for most of that. So that we're requesting to convert that to federal aid this year. And then they also asked for an increase of 100,000 to get to final design and do a supplemental on design on that project. The State Street Premium Corridor Phase 2, that project was officially requested about a year and a half ago for 1.2 million. We've been chiseling away at that project for quite some time, and this is the final amount that is needed for fully funding that project. And then access to opportunity, this was a RAISE grant originally, and I had an error on this one. It should be, instead of $1,115,000, it should be $1,145,000 to start with. So that's the original correction. So that one needed a supplemental to get all of their phases. You might remember this was like a $6 million design project. Is it 8 bundles that were 5 bundles that we're working on? And so as ACHD and the consultant went through all this design work, it was a little bit more expensive than expected, and this gets everything to final design. So that's getting through everything. And then I have a few revisions that came in yesterday. So I'm just going to change this, and what's blue is revised now. So for the pedestrian crossing safety access, ACHD requested that we not include the right-of-way funds in 2026. They felt like that was too tight of a timeline and requested that that be delayed to 2027. So all these blue numbers, those have been delayed to 27. And then on the access to opportunity, that one has the correction that I talked about a moment ago. And ACHD has also requested an additional 50,000 for that. Their numbers were off a little bit in their original request. So with that, because of the large release of funds through that bid savings and also through the delay of the pedestrian crossing safety access project, we have enough money to fund all of these requests with actually a little bit of money left over. You can see at the bottom, if it's negative, that means we have money available. So we would be coming back in February to balance again. We'll work on some additional needs that are out there. We've got one need, I think, that's coming in underway. I'll be working with several of you to see if anything can advance or has additional needs in the TMA area. So with that, I will stand for any questions.
Thank you, Tony. And just to reiterate, yes, we did submit our revisions for access to opportunity. The full cost of the second supplemental was about 1.25 million. And in addition, just for the bed crossing project, just due to the delay in getting design started, we opted to request to move right away to the beginning of FY27. Thank you.
And to clarify, on the access to opportunity, the original request came in last summer, and we were able to fund a small portion of it a little earlier through balancing. So that's why it's not 1.25, but the supplemental that they're working on is that cost. So are there any other questions? Okay.
If there's no further discussion, is there a motion?
Madam Chair, this is Nicole. Our tech recommend to the TMA balancing actions as discussed and modified.
There a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. We'll move on to item 5C, recommend an amendment to the 2026-2032 Regional Transportation Improvement Program.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. This is to recommend board approval of a TIP amendment. So this is in a case where we have large scope changes or an increase, or I'm sorry, not an increase this time, but adding projects, we must go through public comment, and we also must have board approval to move forward with those kind of changes. So today we have one scope change and 2 additional projects. So this is kind of an exciting amendment, adding projects to the program. The first one is a correction. There was a misunderstanding on the transit replacement vehicle for Boise State University that we added in December. The intent was to add 3 new vehicles, but one of those vehicles is not a new vehicle, excuse me. It's a replacement vehicle. One of them was already programmed in a different key number and a different funding source. And so this is just correcting. It's not changing what Boise State was expecting, but it does remove one of the vehicles from this particular project. They're still getting 3 vehicles. It's just through 2 different projects. The second one is adding a transit CNG fueling infrastructure replacement and gas line in Nampa, and the fueling infrastructure replacement in Boise and Nampa. This was a federal Transit Administration competitive grant called Low and No Emissions. We call it a Low-No grant. And it was for $6 million. It will replace CNG in the Orchard Transit Facility in the city of Boise, and also add CNG to Happy Day Transit Facility in Nampa, and add a gas pipeline to their water wastewater treatment plant in Nampa, creating a really unique situation with that natural gas. And if you have questions, Stephen can probably help with that. It's a really kind of an exciting project. The next one is a Safe Streets and Roads for All demonstration project that the city of Boise was awarded $1.3 million through the Safe Streets and Roads for All. This will be along Fairview Avenue. The project itself will be working with local residents and businesses along that corridor where there are many, many crashes, over 320 crashes over the last 5 years. So it's determining kind of a plan on access management as well as safety features along that corridor for demonstration that will eventually feed into our Safe Streets and Roads, the Regional Safety Action Plan for replicability throughout the region on the treatments that they find work really well. So we did have public comment from January 12th through midnight on Monday. So we sent those comments out to you last night. Or I'm sorry, not last night, but during the day yesterday. And this is an overview of the public comments. We received 6, generally in support of these amendments and changes. And there were some very thoughtful questions, or not concerns, but there were some very thoughtful comments that came in through this. So we do recommend that you read all of those in detail. They're posted in your RTAC supplemental because they came in so late. And that we don't make any changes today based on those comments that came in, but we do appreciate the commenters. So we will open now for any questions on these amendments. And here is the recommended motion.
I'd like
If
to make
there's
a
no,
motion.
go ahead, Mark.
Make a motion to recommend that the Compass Board of Directors adopt the resolution amending fiscal year 2632 Regional Transportation Improvement Program as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
We'll move to item 5D, recommend approval of Let's Ride Treasure Valley with Austin Miller.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Madam Chair. Before I dive into it, I did just want to take a brief moment and pause and thank you yourself and Jason as well for your willingness to serve on the leadership team for these RTAC meetings. Really appreciate it. I also, as staff, selfishly am looking forward to get to work a little closer and get to know each of you a little better. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't echo a little bit of what Amy had mentioned earlier. Our gratitude as staff to Crystal, our outgoing chair, And then I don't think it's possible to overstate the value that Nicole has provided to this region over the last at least 22 years, as she noted earlier. And you have been a tremendous help to us here as staff. So really appreciate everything you've done for the region, Compass, and then myself personally. So thank you. But anyways, this item itself is not about any of that. So Madam Chair, Austin Miller, Principal Planner, Planning Team Lead here at Compass. The actual item that I'm here for is to seek your recommendation to the Compass Board for Let's Ride Treasure Valley, the planning and environmental linkages study that we've been working on. For many of you, I really hope that this item is old hat. However, as we do have a couple new faces in the crowd today, I wanted to give a brief background of the overall project as we've been working on it for over 2 years now. Wanted to just provide that high-level summary. We'll dive into the purpose and need, project overview of the public outreach efforts and the screening analysis that we've undertaken, share the results, including the federal comments that we've received back, and then seeing I am cramming that full 2 years worth of work into about an 8-minute long presentation. Glad to pause for any questions that anyone may have before we get into that recommended motion. So let's dive on into it. The region for over 2 decades now has been evaluating high capacity transit. So something that was important to us as Compass as we were trying to move forward is we wanted to make sure that we were building on that past planning to inform what the region's next steps would be. We didn't want to start over, we wanted to progress here. So one example of which was our all aboard survey from 2021, which had nearly 12,000 responses to it. So we wanted to make sure that all of this valuable feedback was being incorporated into furthering the development of this project. However, frankly, we didn't know exactly how to do so. So after some conversations with FHWA and the Federal Transit Administration, it was recommended that a planning and environmental linkages, or PEL study, would be our best route forward. The PEL study provides a framework, really, that sets us up for a more streamlined future environmental review process, while also being able to build on those past local planning efforts that we had already done to narrow the potential options, but through a more federally recognized manner. Essentially, I'm getting too far ahead of myself. Essentially, it bridges the gap between that local work that has already been done and those future upcoming federal environmental review steps that'll be needed. So we partnered with HDR and Jacobs on this project back in 2023 to help us out along the way. To begin a PEL study, you must first define really what we want to achieve and why. So this is the purpose and need for the project. For this project, our purpose focuses on that east-west travel between the region's 4 largest cities, really emphasizing those areas most likely to support and to be supported by high-capacity transit service. This is needed because, tell me if you guys have heard this one before, our region is growing. It's not a surprise to anyone in this room, and we forecast even more of that coming. So combined with how east-west centric our travel patterns are, we anticipate that the transportation system will suffer and congestion will increase travel times by potentially as much as 50%. So we want to make sure that we're planning to address this accordingly. This study employed a 3-tier review process, each with its own stakeholder and public engagement steps associated with it. So tier 1 is the most broad. Do the option, or what we call alternatives, considered support the purpose and need, yes or no, basically as simple as that. Tier 2 started to refine these alternatives a little bit further and then compared them both qualitatively and quantitatively to get a better sense of where the real value actually was between the alternatives. And then tier 3 is where we dove in deep with just our top 3 alternatives, compared them directly to each other to determine which one was likely the most beneficial for the region. Throughout the process, we had a host of stakeholders that had helped. So in addition to working with our various stakeholder groups, you all here as members of RTAC, the Compass Board of Directors, we also had meetings with the rail owners and operators, tribal communities, and federal agencies to make sure that everyone had a voice in the effort that we were undertaking. That effort began with a total of 10 different route options, as well as what we were calling the no-build option that served as the baseline for this analysis. In Tier 1, we were able to reduce that 10 down to 4 potential routes. In our outreach, we received confirmation that our process and the reasoning behind this was sound. So we continued on into Tier 2. We were then able to narrow the list down into 3 route/mode pairings. So this is where we determined what mode of transit, so whether that's bus rapid transit or some form of train, worked best with each of the viable routes. Again, we shared the process reasoning with the public and our stakeholders. This step led to a refinement actually of one of our routes. So we ended up combining the Fairview Avenue route and the Franklin Road route using Fairview in Boise, and then Meridian Road just right over here to our side in downtown Meridian to connect us to Franklin. That would then be taken on out through the rest of Meridian and into Nampa. In Tier 3, we shared the final comparative results via an online survey to see how folks really felt about where we had landed. Ultimately, based on the measures we used, each alternative had some pros and cons. However, commuter rail along the Boise cutoff, the rail line sitting right behind me here, fared the best in most of the categories. So this alternative was top performing in a couple different ways. So in anticipated demand, capacity, travel time. So from the functionality standpoint, it was the best alternative. Also in terms of the ability to preserve right away and the amount of private property that would have to be required or private property owners impacted. It was also the top performing option on that front as well. So these results were all shared with the public and our stakeholders to review how we landed on commuter rail along the existing rail corridor as the most beneficial option for the region. And the response was resoundingly in favor of the Boise cutoff rail alternative. The individuals who filled out the survey really valued the efficiency and potential for ridership it provided. Also, that it got to really the key destinations we were looking for within the region. So looking at proximity to some of the big destinations, such as the downtowns of our major cities, Idaho Center, Boise Town Square Mall, things like that were all included in this alternative. We also asked for the biggest challenges that people see. So property acquisition was certainly one of them. Funding was also near the top of the list, as well as impacts to surface street crossing locations. The cutoff option fared well to moderate in all of those highly perceived challenge categories that we had heard of. So with the data supporting the Boise Rail Cutoff and the public outreach also supporting the Boise Rail Cutoff, the Compass Board of Directors designated that alternative as the preliminary locally preferred alternative for this high-capacity transit planning and environmental linkages study. That allowed us as staff and the consultant team to get to work drafting up the final report, documenting our efforts and recommendations for implementation. That was all provided to the Federal Transit Administration in November. We received their acceptance via email last month, which is included in your packet. We are expecting a more formal looking signed letter, honestly, any day now that we'll make sure we provide to the board before this item gets before them. So based on your recommendation today, we will be seeking action from the Compass Board of Directors next month at their meeting to serve as the formal completion of this planning and environmental linkages study. With that said, while completion of the Pell study marks a big step forward in the federal process and helps expedite that future environmental process, there are still several steps that our region needs to work through together to make sure this project keeps progressing towards implementation. So before we get to the recommended motion, I am glad to stand for any questions you all may have. Wonderful. Then I will just take a quick second and thank you all for your support over the last 2 years in getting to this point, and the recommended motion is on the screen.
Madam Chair, I would move that RTAC recommends Compass Board of Directors to adopt the resolution approving the Let's Ride Treasure Valley Pell study.
Thank you, Stephen. Is there a second?
Hannah seconds on behalf of Tom.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Good job, Austin. I know this was a big lift. All right, item 5E, recommend adoption of 2026 safety performance targets, Hunter Mulhall.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of RTAC. Happy snowy morning to you all. I'm here today with the purpose of getting your recommendation that the Compass Board adopt the FY 2026 safety performance measures and targets. Today, I'm going to cover a couple things. I'm going to do a refresher a little bit about what our vision is for safety in the region. Many of you were part of the Regional Safety Action Plan that was adopted in February of last year. We do set targets every year for safety performance, so I'll kind of remind you of that process and why we do it. Then I'll remind you and show you some trends with regards to some of the performance measures we called out in the Safety Action Plan. Then I'll show you how we're performing with regards to the federal safety performance measures that we have, and those are related to the targets that you will be recommending the Compass Board adopt today. Then I'll show you those proposed targets and then talk a little bit more about some of the work going on with regards to transportation safety this year and upcoming. So with that, I'll remind you all that last year we adopted the Regional Safety Action Plan. The vision of that plan is really shaped by the safe systems approach to really target those serious and fatal injury crashes. Our vision is to eliminate those types of incidents and crashes. Nobody should have to live with life-altering consequences from a mistake they made on the roadway. So, with that recognition, it's not going to happen overnight. This is a big endeavor. We set out to reduce serious and fatal injury crashes by 50% over the next 30 years. That lines up with our CIM 2055 long-range transportation plan that's currently in draft. And it was a target that we felt reasonable and in line with what we saw with some other countries that have really bought in fully to the safe systems approach. So kind of a realistic target that we've set. We baselined our performance measures and targets from the 5-year averages for those performance measures from 2019 to 2023. We typically use the 5-year rolling averages because sometimes we have those anomaly years. I think 2023 being one of those really a number of high fatality years. We try to kind of have a trending average that we go by because sometimes there's just no reason for why there's more crashes in certain years. We are required to set targets for 5 different safety performance measures each year. That's part of our requirement as an MPO. The state also has some federal requirements as well. So those are the targets you'll be recommending today. We work closely with ITD on developing these targets, and we're actually going to, we're in line with 2 of the statewide targets for a region. I'll talk about that when we get there. Crash data tends to lag about a year out. So the data you're seeing today or the trends that you're seeing today will be from 2020 to 2024. We don't quite have yet a full crash data set for 2025 that has to go through some federal processes for approval with the FARS database, and kind of challenging. So we typically get that full data around September, October. So last year was the first year that we set some regional targets for fatal and serious injury crashes. So we don't yet have that data set yet to see if we've met those FY 2025 targets, but we can kind of see where we're trending, and I'll show you that here shortly. Before I get into the 5 different performance measures, the federal performance measures, I just want to show you some of the trends coming from the Regional Safety Action Plan. In our safety action plan, we identified 5 types of crashes that tend to lead to more fatal and serious outcomes. You can see here the 5-year average. So for this is just with actually just 2024 data added to that 5-year rolling averages. We saw a decrease in the total number of those crashes by about, dropped our average to by about 4. Our intersection related crashes dropped by over 5. Lane departure crashes increased by 3. A little alarming, we saw motorcycle crash averages increased by 8, which is a little bit astounding. Our vulnerable road users on bike and pedestrian numbers increased by over 1.5 or so. Seatbelt related crashes and impaired driving crashes were up. So that's just bringing in 2024 data from our baseline. And we don't have targets set around these. These are just things that we'll be monitoring each year as they come to you to set these performance measures and targets. It's to hold us accountable. I wouldn't say there's a need to panic yet. We're in the first year of our action plan. Again, I think 2023 was a kind of an anomaly year. That's going to change these averages quite a bit. When I peeked in at the 2025 data, initial data sets coming in, I think we're going to become a little bit lower on these things. So I don't think there's any need to panic at these numbers yet, but it's something that we need to continue to monitor each year and see how we're tracking and keep having those conversations.
Madam Chair, can I ask a question really quick on that last slide?
Yes.
When you're talking about vulnerable road users, motorcycles, and you have vulnerable road users, bikes and pedestrians, we are seeing a huge insurgence of these motorized bicycles, or what I wouldn't even call them a bicycle, quite honestly. They are like more of like the equivalent of what we used to call a moped back in the day that had to be licensed like a vehicle. Where did they fall in that category? Just because they are such an emerging issue in the region, I know, especially in Eagle.
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't have an answer for that. I don't think in the crash data now that you can flag like an e-bike or e-scooter, or they have a classification for that thing. A lot of that stuff is typically buried in the police reports. So right now we don't have any good data around behaviors and crash trends with some of those other mobility devices. And I think that's something that we could take on in our safety working group that was formed through the Regional Safety Action Plan, and some conversations we can have with ITD and Office of Highway Safety to see better capture some of that data.
Just a quick follow-up, Madam Chair. I would also love to see maybe an age distribution of some of these crash data as well. Are we seeing younger drivers having challenges, or are these older drivers? Because, you know, older drivers have issues too. That's just not just the youth. But I do think as we start kind of going through this data and using it as a data set, it would be a really good thing to understand how this is working out in the region.
Absolutely, that's a great point. And I know when you do look at some of the data, it's typically the younger and older behaviors and people that are involved in some of these crashes. But that's a good point to bring to some of these meetings to look at and slice and dice these trends in a few different ways. So thanks for your input. So these 5 measures here are the measures will be recommending the FY 2026 targets for. Again, the first column is the baseline that we are using. So this is where we're starting. We want to cut these numbers in half by the year 2055. The second column there is that 5-year average with just rolling out forward a year. And then the FY 2025 target that was adopted last year is in the column on the right. We don't have, again, I mentioned we don't have 2025 data yet, so we don't know if we've met these targets or missed these targets, but I flagged them anyways just to show where we're trending based off of the 1 year of data. So we're on track to meet 2 of these 5 measures. Again, I wouldn't panic at this point because we're so early into this phase, into this plan as well. These targets we'll keep monitoring. I think when we start to get a few years into the implementation of this plan, we can start having some more conversations about adjusting these targets if we need to, or taking action to make sure that we meet some of these targets as well. So just to show you the current trends, and then on the slide here is the draft 2026 safety targets. We are proposing we adopt regional targets for the numbers of fatalities, serious injuries, and non-motorized fatality and serious injuries. And these numbers here track with that baseline to 2055, 50% reduction. So this is where we need to be in FY26 to hit that target. We're recommending we adopt the statewide targets for the rate. That's a good way that we can compare ourselves to the larger state, is using these rates. The numbers in the past, we've adopted just the statewide numbers, which don't quite, has no context really for our area. So it's nice to have two measures where we're in sync with the state there. So these are the recommended or draft 2026 targets. Just to reiterate some of the work that's happening now, we've had our first safety work group, our official chartered safety work group meeting last week here in this room. That was one of the action items in our safety action plan, as form a group to see through the implementation of this vision and plan. There was some great discussions and presentations from a lot of our member agencies and some of the work they're doing. NAMPA has 2 different safe streets and roads for all grants going on right now. They have a demonstration grant on State Highway 45, 12th Avenue, where they're testing out some really neat signal technologies and timing and passive detection type technologies to improve pedestrian safety and traffic safety on that corridor. It's a lot of red light running. There's a couple high schools, middle schools, Taco Bell's next to high schools type thing. So kids running across the highway. So they're really looking at improving safety on that by testing some different technologies that haven't been tested in the region. That'll come back and inform our safety plan and be shared through that safety working group, what the findings are from that study. They are going to be doing a road safety audit on the north side, and I believe second and third. Boise, again, you saw that in the TIP amendment. They want a planning and demonstration grant for Fairview Avenue, one of their highest crash corridors, which we identified in our safety action plan. Compass is heading on Spears. This is a project to prioritize signalized intersections for the implementation of leading pedestrian intervals and accessible pedestrian signals across the 2 counties, as well as some of those other low-cost operational type improvements to improve pedestrian safety at our signalized intersections. And then again, I mentioned we just had our first safety work group meeting last week. We will look to have another one this spring, early summer. So if you'd like to be a part of that conversation, please reach out to me and I'll get you on that mailing list. With that, just to conclude, we're on track to meet 2 out of those 5 FY 2025 measures we set based on our 2024 data. My initial looks at 2025 data are going to be a little bit lower than average. So I think we'll be close with some of those other targets as well. We're recommending that we stay on track with our vision and our plan now with the FY 2026 targets that we're recommending. And then again, this is an ongoing conversation. This is an every year thing. Safety is our biggest priority here. It is something we will be sharing each year and be looking at and reviewing. So should we need to adjust, we can kind of have some of those harder to have conversations down the road. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
Madam Chair, a few questions. Thanks, Austin. Is there? Not Austin. Is there a reason for the timing of these targets now? Like, do we need to set these targets now?
Yes. There's a requirement we have to have them assign memorandum back to ITD by the end of February. So this needs to go through the board.
Okay. Because I was just curious if there was a way to align the data availability and the setting of the targets better, or maybe we just are looking back. I mean, I guess it doesn't matter. You could just use the previous year's stuff.
I think moving forward, it won't be an issue because we'll be in that range, I think, a little bit better, right? We're just missing our 25-year target that we've set. So we'll be able to look on actual targets that we've set and have some data behind it. We're just in kind of an awkward gap phase right now.
Okay. Thanks, Hunter.
Madam Chair, a question. So is the primary source of your data ITD?
Yes.
And are you having any issues? There was for a time, and I will admit I'm not as versed as I am now, but as I was then. There was a lag in a lot of the incidents being entered into the ITD data system, which meant even if you're trying to align targets for a year, you still had a data gap of several months behind getting that data available and in the ITD system. Is that still an issue?
Madam Chair, Nicole, no, so they recently rolled out in the last couple of years the ITD new metric system, which is getting more up-to-date data. It's just not, when you're looking at these federal performance measures, they want to be using the FARS data, which has to go through this rigorous kind of test of the federal government. So we can see the data quicker for internal purposes, but for kind of these external federal requirements, we got to wait for that official FARS number to come out. So they've made a lot of progress in making that. Like I can already see some of the 2026 data rolling into the system. So I can look at, that's why I said I peeked ahead at the 2025 data and I'm looking and so that's a good point. I can bring some of these draft or what I'm seeing trends a little bit more in the future and make it more current year, but kind of have these numbers aren't final.
Just a quick follow-up. I just think it's a good thing and maybe needs to be included in here is a little bit of a timeline of, how and when we adopt our standard, but when we can perfect that with the data coming in, just so there's a clear expectation of when and how we're applying the data and how long it takes to get through the process, the FARS process, and get to final recommendations.
Okay.
I just think that's kind of going to be important because I know state wants it in February, but do we really have all of 25 done by the time we're adopting 26 so we can really evaluate what the trend was or what's happening? I think there maybe is just a timeline that we just need to talk through, or at least illustrate out a little bit better so we can understand what data is available and usable when we're making the next year's recommendations.
Thanks. That's a good suggestion. I think that's a good topic for the safety work group. That's okay. No, but that's a good, I'm already banking agenda items in here. So.
Is there any further discussion or comments?
Madam Chair, I recommend I move RTAC recommend Compass Board Directors adoption of the fiscal year 26 safety performance measures.
Nicole, is there a second?
This is Stacy. I'll second.
Thank you, Stacy. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Hunter.
Thank you.
All right, it looks like we have a couple items in our packet that are status reports only. Is there any staff that needs to present on those, or is it just, it's just what's in the packets, the RTAC agenda worksheet and the obligation reports, if you can review those. Our next meeting is February 25th, 2026. Is there anything else we need to do before dinner? All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Nicole. Is there a second? I really want to stay.
I'll second.
Oh, thank you, Stephen. All right. Do we need a vote to adjourn?
We do.
Okay. A vote to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right. Thank